Just before 6:30 p.m. on January 16, 2004, a 30-year-old woman named Jody Lane led two dogs on leashes out of her apartment building in New York City. So it was freezing outside. It was the middle of winter, and Jody was incredibly busy as a PhD student at Columbia University. But Jody would never miss a walk with her two dogs, Riley and Miko. She loved them. So these two dogs were basically like Jody's kids. She had pictures of them all over her apartment. And basically, no matter what, she always made sure that above all else, they were happy and healthy and taken care of, even if it meant, her making quite a few sacrifices to make that happen, like going out in the freezing cold regularly to give them their exercise. And so now, once she was outside, Jody pulled her coat tightly around herself to try to keep warm, and then she walked down her building's front steps, and she was immediately glad to see that the sidewalks had recently been salted. So even though there was still snow on the ground, it basically was just on the edges of the pavement. And so the middle was basically clear, not too slippery, and so she and her dogs could head off down the sidewalk, basically unobstructed. As Jody's dogs walked happily on down the sidewalk ahead of her on their leashes, Jody found herself just sort of taking in the neighborhood. She lived in East Village, which is a part of New York City, and it was very lively, and it changed a lot with each season. And in New York City, there are all 4 seasons. And so even though Jody had done this walk many, many times with her dogs, this was a well-trodden path for them, it still just felt new every time. It just never really got boring around here. It's one of the main reasons that Jody loved living in East Village. It was just constantly changing and exciting. Eventually, when Jody and her dogs had gotten about a block from her apartment, Jody looked up and she saw there was a man walking his dog on the same side, the same sidewalk, in their direction. And while Jody loved her dogs and she viewed them as very sweet creatures, the reality was these two dogs really only got along with each other. They did not get along with any other dogs. Didn't matter what dog it was, they were going to have an issue with it. But Jody was used to that, and so anytime she saw other dogs approaching, she would just, step across and get in the road and cross the street if she had to. She would just get out of the way. She wouldn't put it on the other owner to get around her dogs. She would just remove her dogs from the situation. And so Jody just naturally turned and stepped over the mound of snow that was pushed up on the side of the sidewalk to step over it and get onto the street, to cross the street. But as she's stepping over the snow, again, to avoid this dog, she's trying to get her two dogs to come with her, but they're not. They're actually starting to freak out. The two dogs are. They're barking and yapping, and she's thinking that's so weird. Her immediate reaction is, what are they doing? That other dog is so far away. How could they be already upset about it? But then she looks down at them, and the dogs were fighting with each other, which was just so unusual. These dogs, which really they did get along well, they're barking and yapping and they're slashing at each other. They're going nuts. And then it was they panicked, the two dogs, and they start running in opposite directions. And so Jody's got each of the leashes. She's getting yanked in either direction. The other dog at this point, nowhere near. It's her dogs on their own are in full panic mode. All she's thinking about is just getting these crazy dogs back to her apartment, just get back home. That's all she wants to do, and she's trying to pull one in. And as she's doing that, remember, it's pretty slick outside, and she trips, and she falls onto the ground, onto the sidewalk. And the second she hits the ground, everything goes black. It would turn out, despite how observant Jody was on all these walks that she would do with her dog, within East Village, there was one thing that she never actually noticed about her walking route that she did all the time. And that was right next to the stretch of sidewalk where she ultimately fell on the ground, so over by the curb, there was this not that conspicuous, but a pretty large metal plate that was sort of embedded in the pavement. It was sort of off to the side of the pavement. And there was good reason why Jody had not ever recognized this plate, because it really didn't matter in her day-to-day life. And also these plates are all over the city. They're on lots of sidewalks, not just in East Village, but everywhere in New York City. They are used to cover up things like manholes and subway vents, holes you don't want to fall into. They cover them up with these plates that can come off and on as people need to go down and access what's underneath. And there's lots of stuff under the sidewalk in New York City that needs access points. But sometimes those metal plates, like this one in particular that she walked right near, it covered up electrical wiring. And unfortunately, some of that salt that was placed on the sidewalk over and over again to make sure no snow would get in the way of people like Jody and their dogs going on walks, some of that salt found its way through the crack of this plate down onto the wires, and it corroded the wires to the point where some of those wires were fully exposed and touching the metal plate right above it, meaning they were conducting electricity directly into this plate. And so when Jody is getting ready to cross the street, because the other dog is coming and her dogs are panicking and barking and fighting each other, they weren't actually fighting with each other. They were standing on this metal plate. They were being electrocuted and they were panicking. They were trying to get off the plate, but it's slick and icy and they're trying to get off, and it looked like they were fighting. And so in her panic state, it's like Jody's trying to control her dogs who have bolted from the plate, and she falls just because of the tug and pull that's going on with her dogs and the ground being sort of slick. And where does she land? On the metal plate. And so unfortunately, Jody would be electrocuted to death, but her dogs at least would run away and they would survive. In the end, Jody's family filed a lawsuit and they reached a settlement with the electrical company who owned that service box under that plate. And the family received about $7.2 million, and they would ultimately set up a scholarship in Jody's name at Columbia University.